Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to another episode of Owning Her Health. I am your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, and I'm excited to bring you episode 23. On today's episode, I had a goddess chat. We went back into that XX paradigm, our dark and our light, looking at a subject not many of us ladies like to admit, and that's when we're rising and we are not quite in the circles or spending the time in the circles that actually would take us further. We sort of hit a little brick wall, mainly, or shall I call it a beautiful glass ceiling, self-imposed, because sometimes we are in a circle that feels really intimidating. Maybe we feel not enough, or we actually are amongst sisters that are really, kicking butt and doing their thing, and actually were inspiration to us, which is why we joined that circle. And then all of a sudden we look at our path and we might feel jealous, we might feel less than, we might be thinking that we need to move into other circles which no longer serve us. So we're going to get into that a little bit. We're also going to talk on the behavioral analysis and why this is a bigger picture than just our attitude. It's really about how human beings really change their behaviors and how we can change our behaviors by setting ourselves up to succeed instead of failing. Today's episode is sponsored by Embody 360. Embody 360, we had that on our show a couple weeks ago. It's a great platform for those of you who work a little bit more holistically like me. You get customizable diets, supplements, exercise, meditation, sleep opportunities. If you're somebody that like me that has some restrictions on, even though I have my certifications in women's health coaching and I work with functional nutrition aspects and pain and inflammation, things are changing a little bit slower with my licensures than I'd like it to be. So I can get access to customized and plans that are actually made by a registered dietitian, thus fulfilling my compliance issues for working with people in group health coaching and expanding my wellness, and even post-op discharge, having things to go and different ways I can see people before they're even hurt, which is really, really important to me. There's video and text chat, all HIPAA compliant, and you really get a 360-degree lifestyle plan. So check them out. And in my show notes, I have a wonderful VIP link for you that you can get a discount and after your 2-week trial. So check that out in the show notes and on the blog over at drlisahollandpt.com. Second sponsor today is Mind Body Brand Academy. MindBodyBrandAcademy.com is where you can go download right now your Biz Bliss survey. And when you do that, you're going to be able to move the dial from big idea, stressed out, taking yourself wanting a more flexible lifestyle, more flexible way to be both present in your home and present in your career in a big way by helping you move into a business and a platform of your own. Even if you're working for someone else, it's getting to the point where you want people to come look for you, not your service. Being one amongst the many is not the way you're going to be able to fill up your appointment book and make your business successful. So hop on over to MindBodyBrandAcademy.com and go download that Biz Bliss survey to get started right now, right after you listen to this next episode of Owning Her Health. So buckle up, download the subscribe to the podcast, download this episode, get yourself ready, and I'll see you on Owning Her Health right now.
Welcome to this episode of Owning Her Health with your host, Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. Join Lisa as she starts the conversation on what it really takes to become a healthy, wealthy, and whole CEO of your life. Listen in to real talk by real lady leaders in all walks of life as they open up on personal health stories, wealth, career, and feminine abundant living. Learn how to grow by owning your body, expanding your mind, and aligning your soul with the purpose only you can pursue in this world. Happiness begins with owning her health right now.
Hey everyone, Dr. Lisa here, filming an episode of Owning Her Health. And this episode, I'm doing this. It's the kind of day that it is. Sound maybe not going to be 100%. I'm using my earphones versus my microphones, kind of sitting in my home office. But it has to do with what this topic is. So today we're going to be talking about understanding some of our tendency to be in groups, and it's not the right group for us. And that's because we're not, as we're becoming leaders, if we're wanting to become leaders as women, sometimes we tend, because of our own work that we have to do, and that XX kind of duality within us, our dark and our light that I've spoken of in earlier episodes, the double goddess episode of this podcast. Because of that, we tend to hang out with not the crowd that can really rise us, not the energies full time, because we feel a little less than. We might feel a little intimidated by being around really strong sisters, and that's part of the sisterhood. So we're going to be talking, the wound of the sisterhood. So we're going to be talking again on a little bit of what I brought up in that goddess wisdom, the double X conundrum that we have. And we're going to be talking particularly about being amongst strong sisters and feeling less than in this episode. So where is this coming from? This is coming from a place where my Goddess Wisdom Mastermind is a good example. It is a private community that I have been inviting women into, have been screening a bit. It's an entrepreneurial workshop, really. We have entrepreneurial minds. That doesn't mean we're all necessarily owning a business, but we really are looking to own our life. We're looking to be the CEO of our lives, and in that way are creating or birthing something. Now, we may be in the primary vocation of motherhood. We may be, by choice. See, that's very different in being in the primary vocation of motherhood when that wasn't necessarily a conscious choice you made, when you found yourself in that situation, and maybe you had a very different life plan. Likewise, some of us may be in a position where we're not in the planned motherhood vocation that we had hoped at one point. For one reason or another, we may have not been able to take that role naturally, or even by adoption, or because of situations in our relationship and us really desiring to do that with a partner. Or we find that it just hasn't worked out. It doesn't seem to be where we're ending up. And so maybe some of us have been on a different path, and again, not by our conscious choice. And so what happens is when we hit a point where we do decide that we're going to reclaim and become and own our body, own our mind, own our part in relationships, not only relationships with other people, but primarily with ourself, because that's what the first two things are about, with our body and our mind. Own our relationship with the world, other people, with our career goals, with our career, with our impact, our service to the world. Because no one here probably listening to my podcast is the woman or the man who is out to take it all. No one in this community is really about the scarcity mindset. We're about the abundance mindset. And if you traveled on here, but your focus seems to be about what can I take, what can I get, what can I keep, all for myself, then it's probably because it's out of a fear. It's out of a fear, and in your heart, you have an abundance mentality, or else you wouldn't be listening to me right now. You wouldn't have made it this far. So what I'm asking you to do is think about who are you hanging out with to help make that a social norm. Because what's true is that if you look at the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and you look at what they did in their research in terms of what really makes transformational change, behavioral changes in people. And that's what we need, right? If we see a behavior we don't like, or if we're not seeing our behavior, but the results we're getting in our life seem to be always in the same place where we're not comfortable with anymore, where we do not think is our max potential, where we do not have the lifestyle that we want, then we need to understand it's our behaviors that are bringing us into that situation. So studies show I can't change your attitude. Only you can change your attitude. But what I can influence is your behaviors. And what that also showed by the CDC's research in the health impact pyramid, I will have a link to that on the show notes, but you can Google that up, is that if I look at the pyramid, the top of the iceberg, okay, the stuff above the water that everyone's focusing on because they see right out there, is educate yourself, and then get treatment or coaching or partnering or whatnot. But the reality is that none of that makes a difference unless the bottom of the iceberg, the foundation, which is access. So here I am giving you access here, right? You get to look at my YouTube show, or you get to listen to my podcast, or you get to read one of my blogs, okay? But maybe you don't have the internet. So now you don't have access. So what do I got to do? I got to go out and do meet and greets. I need to go visit your country. I need to go make my wisdom circles, in real life wisdom circles. I need to give you access to what I even have to say, to some of these behaviors. I need to let you see me. I need to let you see, maybe on a business side, that's my brand. But on a personal side, that's just me being me. And if I can align that, some of what I'm teaching women is the facade. Around 40 years old, you're going to be just naturally feeling like letting that go. How blessed are you if you realize that in your 30s? How even more awesome if you can go into your 20s feeling that exuberance of not having forgotten it from your youth. And the issue there is your teens. So this is talking to you, women in your 40s and 50s, to please share this episode or this talk from this or any inspiration with your teens. Because she's forming how she's going to navigate the woman she knows she is, the girl she knows she is, with what she thinks she needs to be. To be accepted and not abandoned, not betrayed, and honestly, true to herself, because it's going to come slamming. And that's the beauty of the third age. That's the beauty of menopause, actually, if we'd stop dreading it so much, is that it comes more naturally. So getting back to the health, impact pyramid, we need to have access. That's the bottom of it. That's the biggest chunk. If you give people access, if you give women access to seeing it, they need to see role models. They need to see leaders doing things a different way than what they think is the norm. Then you can change that second part, which is actually change the consciousness, the social consciousness of what's popular, really. That's the easiest thing. Make it popular. That's why social media works. It becomes an influencer and the norm for people. They see it, they see it, they see it. They don't think it's so different. Therefore, they don't see that gap between who they are and who they want to be or what is going on. Peer pressure. It all goes down to, again, that teen. How did you deal with peer pressure? What was your resiliency from it formed then? Because it's going to come bite you over and over each decade in a different way, because you're going to have a different role or you're going to be playing a different game. So we need to make it a social norm. We need to make it normal in some way or doable. They need to see that if they choose to be that way, if they would like to do this, that there might be a social structure, a tribe, a group. But we have to be careful because we don't want to create these silos that are absent from the rest of the world. What we're doing is just collecting our energy, giving it a boost, which gets me back to the point of this podcast talk, which is when we do see that, when we do see other women who are living a life we'd like to live, who are having an energy about them, getting results, taking action steps, do we, one, personally find ourselves getting jealous? Do we somehow stop trusting the path we're taking or the choices we're making? Do we get discouraged and feel like failures all of a sudden merely because one of our sisters, whom we actually looked up to, were seeing as an inspiration, suddenly becomes our enemy or our threat? Because who does that? We do. We're doing that. And I see that time and time again. And I'm trying to cut into that. But I can only create the circle. I can only open and hold the space. The women in that community, women such as yourself, need to do the work, the personal work, that if they see jealousy raised, if they see themselves feeling less than, if they're not trusting someone just because they're doing something that they are having challenge personally to do, instead of what would be most productive and knowing that they're healthy, instead of saying, hey, I am in community with you, let me ask for help and advice. Hey, let me put myself out there that I'm struggling and ask a specific woman or the team that holds this energy together, which is a stronger energy than I myself could ever build. For some receptive, let me be receptive, so therefore I need to ask. In order to receive, you need to ask. But you need to do the work to be receptive to what you're being given. So if you're given access by the universe to strong women who are kicking butt, doing the things you want to do, living the lifestyle you want, having the relationships you seek, instead of feeling threatened and saying you need to go off and hang out with people who feel less, or you need to go and place yourself in a power position by going into a group where you know they're not thinking as productively, they're not taking the action steps, they're in circles of where you used to be, just so you can feel higher than, dominant to, then you're actually falling into the patriarchy. You're falling into the masculine flow. I'm not saying that's not helpful, and I'm not saying you may not need to go step into that once in a while when you're feeling particularly low. What I'm saying is you are an XX girl. You are an XX. You have that power to lead with your sisters. You don't need to be the king of the crowd because you are the queen. You know how to lead next to. You know how to step behind and be so bright that you're actually shining through that other woman. You're actually making her shine. And in doing so, you feel good. You feel good having taken a step back. For example, you do that all the time, maybe with your children. You might do that with your husband. You might do that naturally with a girlfriend, with a guy friend, with a colleague. You know why you do that so well? If you're the person who's listening to this and everyone says they love you, you're so supportive, you're such a cheerleader, you're such an inspiration, and you don't feel like people have your back, then that's because you've stepped into that role. That's because you're that bright. But you're not so good at the receiving end. You're only good at the shining end. And so even when you're shining, you're letting them empty you. You have no boundaries. You don't have boundaries that they understand. Because that third tier, that other chunk that you don't quite see under the iceberg that's showing, is doable tools, reusable action steps, exactly the systems. And so you don't know which system to buy. You don't know what coaching program to go into. You don't know what group to stay in even when you're uncomfortable. You don't know where to let your guard down and utilize the tools if you haven't done that work. And so you spend money and you join groups and you watch. You watch on the sidelines, but you're not quite taking action. So what do you do if you find yourself in that? Right? What if you do? You have the education, you know what to do, you have the education, you even know the people to ask, you have your coach, you have your mentor, you have your therapist, you have your gurus for the skill set that you have, the letters after your name, the title, you even have your title maybe, you have your role, and you find yourself in that place where that has guided you to a lot of different things, but you're not taking action. You need to allow yourself to be vulnerable. You need to see your dark, and you need to do something you wouldn't normally do. You need to stay in that circle where you feel uncomfortable and get comfortable showing that. And that's a really, really scary thing to do. You need to look in. You need to do the self-reflection. I offer you meditation. Insight Timer app. That's a great app to spend some time with yourself. Journal. But don't just journal like it's a Facebook page where you're only putting up the good. And don't just journal where it's like some other people's Facebook page where they're only complaining and only seeing the bad. What I'm asking you to do is put out your truth and try to understand what you're gaining from it, but also where you're losing from it, where you're losing out. So you're going to see it as the dark as well as the light. So I will put a couple prompts for you on this underneath this, just to give you ideas, but it's by no means me coaching you in particular. It's just me opening your eyes to where you might need to use your energy better, because I see that over and over. I see really great wisdom circles happen. So like my Goddess Mastermind and other professional groups, such as Kate Northrup's Origin Group or even, more spirited group, let's say Spirit Junkies, Gabby Bernstein's Spirit Junkies, or even Marie Forleo's B School, or places like that. And there'll be the people who I think, and I know because I struggle with this. I understand. I have done that. I've moved beyond that by challenging myself to meet and greet and remain in network with people who I feel are further down the path from me, and not allow myself to say I feel less than because my path is a little curvier at this point, that as long as it's been my choice. See, that's the difference. When you want freedom, which many of the people who end up around me do, when you want freedom to be you, to live your life, to do the things that you wanted to do, to fill yourself the way you wanted to fill, because you're a good person that has something to share, then it's okay to understand your own boundaries, your own pace. What's not okay is getting completely frustrated because you could do more, or you see your dark things, and instead of saying, let me be amongst the people who have overcome that, let me stay within them, let me ask for their assistance, let me show where I struggle as an action step, as a challenge point to not allow myself to feel less than for being in my truth. What's not okay is when you don't allow yourself that opportunity and you have it right there. You are in that circle. You know those people. And you just got to get over it. That's fear. That's fear of failure. That's fear of being abandoned. That's fear of betrayal. That's fear of realizing you have more work to do. And maybe it's an energy issue. Maybe it's literally core energy. Maybe you need to add a really great shake to your day. Or maybe you need to focus on staying part of that group and checking in with that Facebook group, or meeting up in those meetups with those women versus other ones where you get to reiterate where you already feel really strong over and over. I see this a lot in caregivers. We love to be in the group where we can give advice, because maybe that group where we're building a business or doing something new makes us feel less than, makes us feel like failures because we haven't done our work enough. Because we're allowing that in. We're allowing that. Instead of seeing, my gosh, I'm actually friends with these people. I actually can literally message so-and-so who has 3 books and ask her where she would go, or a coach she would recommend, or if she has time, or if I can pay her for an hour or something. Like 5 years ago, 2 years ago, you didn't know her. You know that game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? I want you to maybe think about that. Where are you kind of not using your connections and your network because of that? Because of that tendency to maybe feel less than or jealous, or see that, where are you not using your sisterhood? And I'm saying the sisterhood, I'm talking about your female leadership connections. I'm not talking about your male role models or your male mentors, or even your male God, if that's it. I'm talking about Mother Mary. I'm talking about the goddesses. I'm talking about your, girlfriend from high school that's doing really well and keeps reaching out to help you, but you don't say yes ever. I'm talking about that neighbor that seems to have her crap together. Because I bet you when you talk to her, she's going to show you how much she doesn't feel like she has her crap together, and it's going to make you feel better. So that's my spiel for today. That's what I'm talking about today. So if you want more information on this, if you want support on that, comment below on if this is one of the blogs or on the YouTube or where you connect. And if this reaches out and speaks to you and you're ready to do some work here, let me know. Let me know, and we'll get you connected. Thanks so much for another wonderful episode of Owning Her Health.
Thank you for listening into this episode of Owning Her Health with Dr. Lisa Holland, PT. To learn more about her personal and professional development service, visit her online at drlisahollandpt.com.